In this video, I'm going to be talking about the brand new Claude Opus 4.5 model and how it stacks up. Yesterday, I was able to get to use this model on day 84 of Vibe Coding an App Until I Make $1 Million series. And while we were actually on the live stream, this model kind of unexpectedly dropped. I was not anticipating this model this week, so very happy to get my hands on the model. And yesterday, I was able to actually use it. You can see here from this line, 70.1 million tokens. And that has given me enough time and enough usage to actually be able to share with you guys what I think about this model and where it's going to fit in my vibe coding workflow. So with that being said, before we get into the video, if you guys have not already liked and subscribed, make sure you do that. It really helps support what we're doing here with BridgeMind. And if you have not joined the Discord, there's a link in the description down below. And with that being said, let's just get right into it because I want to talk to you guys about what I was able to build yesterday, and then a couple things about Claude Opus 4.5 that you should take into account when you're thinking and considering this model for your workflow. So the first thing that I want to dive into is pricing. So pricing is a big thing with this model because as you can see here, Opus 4.5, input $5 per million, output $25 per million. So that is a lot more expensive than GPT-5.1. GPT-5.1 is $1.25 per million on the input and then like $10 on the output. So, and then I think with Gemini Pro, it's like $4 and then $12, something like that. I may be wrong, but it is very, it's somewhere around there. So when you compare Opus 4.5 to those models, you know, Opus 4.5 is more expensive than those models. But I think what we have to do in this scenario is we actually have to consider, we have to compare what Anthropic actually did when compared with the previous Opus models. So what you can see here is that Claude Opus 4 and Claude Opus 4.1 were both $75 per million on the output, as you can see here. And then they were $15 per million on the input, which was incredibly expensive. I mean, you would be using this model, and I think there was one month where I actually used $300 worth of this model, which was just absurd, right? So, you know, if we look at this and we look at what they were able to do, they were able to produce a more intelligent model for a third of the price. And that is very impressive. When I saw the pricing, I was like, oh, wow. You know, because the pricing on Opus was a great model, the Opus 4.1 and Opus 4, but the pricing almost made it unusable. So let's go over to what Anthropic actually released in terms of where this stacks up on the benchmarks. And what you can see here is in agentic coding and in all of these categories, it is leading by a lot. Look at this. So this is the biggest one that I look at. Agentic coding, SWE-bench verified, 80.9%. So it's got a 3% advantage on Codex Max. Compared with GPT 5.1, it's got 4.6%? 4.6% on GPT 5.1, and then a 3% advantage on versus Codex Max, which is very impressive. It's easily trumping Gemini 3 Pro, and then it easily beat almost by, over 6% Opus 4.1. So super impressive. And so in terms of benchmarks, very good. And in pricing, very good. Now, what else does that leave us, right? You know, I actually want to show you guys what I was able to build yesterday and kind of talk about the experience that I had on stream with this model. So, you know, as you guys know, yesterday for the day 84 stream, I was working on an AI clipping agent. So if you guys are familiar with Opus Clip, there's tons of AI clipping agents out there now. It's kind of a necessity. So with ViewCreator.ai, which is the app that we're building and is currently in open beta with over 1,000 users, you know, really what is important is that we're able to create an all-in-one platform where users are able to completely manage their social media presence and grow on social media using AI tools to be able to integrate with all their different platforms to do automated scheduling and posting. And one big important factor there is that we knew that we had to create an AI clipping agent. So you can see this here. So let's bring up ViewCreator. And what I want to talk about, because I think it's important, is that we were on stream for 2.5 hours working on this clipping agent, and we were using GPT 5.1, we were using Claude Sonnet 4.5, and about 2.5 hours into the day, this model released. So I switched over and I started using Opus, and this is where it gets interesting. Opus was able to solve the issues that we were struggling with and actually build this agent. So with those 70 million tokens, what were we able to do? So if I actually go to this clipping agent, what's really cool is that we can go back in the job history. And first of all, it wasn't even working. Like in the job history, do you guys see how it says failed, 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 failed all here? So this is when we were using GPT 5.1, and then Opus was actually able to get it to the point where it was able to create clips. And then you can see here it wasn't able making them accessible in S3, and then we slowly iterated and iterated and iterated. Here's one here.
For their first 17 games,
you know, so it was creating the clips, and over the course of the day, I want to show you guys, this is what it was able to create, and I'm honestly very, very impressed. So just watch this clip that was able to be created with our clipping agent. I spent, as you can see here, 54.6 million tokens inside of Cursor on Gemini 3 Pro. So until you can really give an accurate response on a model, so you can see that the face is cropped. It was able to crop the screen share, and these are challenging tasks, right? The UI, in my opinion, these Sonnet models or the Opus models have been known for good UI, but I would, so the reason that this is so impressive is because we were able to instruct Opus 4.5 to be able to say, hey, if there's a screen share, you need to be able to crop, you need to do what's called smart cropping. And we were able to use Opus to be able to do this smart cropping. And Opus was easily able to get the captions solved. It was easily able to get the transcription solved. It was easily able to get the actual clipping solved. It was this smart cropping that's like the truly impressive feature. Like you can see that my face cam is on the bottom here. And Opus was able to do this. And I think it's so impressive when you're working with models where, let's say, you're struggling with a feature, and then you get a new model and you give the new model a try at it, and it's actually able to get this. And I mean, look at this clip it created. Watch this. Is we made it so that users can click enhance with AI, and we can just say, we can give it a prompt. This is optional, so if I just want to improve it, I can just click generate, and it's actually going to be able to improve the description that was already there. So, we were able to build a competitor of Opus Clip within a couple hours using Opus 4.5. And, I'm just very, very impressed with what it was able to do. And in terms of, like, one thing that I will say, so, because I spend pretty much all my days vibe coding, I think I can give a pretty accurate understanding of this model. You look at the benchmarks, and I will say this is an incredibly intelligent model. And because of the cost reduction, this is now probably the #1 model. And I'm very, very happy that it's here. And one important thing that I also found impressive is the speed. So, when you actually consider speed, let's just do, I want to say, do an in-depth review of this functionality and update the documentation accordingly. Let's just kind of watch it as you see how fast it actually moves. Because one thing that I noticed when I was using the model yesterday is that it is incredibly fast. So sometimes you'll have these models, like for example, you'll have a model like GPT 5.1 Codex Max, which is essentially just ChatGPT Pro and ChatGPT, and they integrate it in Codex with a coding model. And they'll up that coding benchmark, right? They'll do a little bit of a better job, but then they'll sacrifice so much on the speed of the model. And one thing that I will say is that this model, to me, is like just as fast, if not maybe even faster than Sonnet 4.5. And it's definitely faster than the previous 4.1. And I'm just very impressed that they were able to actually create a model where they weren't sacrificing so much on the speed while also getting that intelligence level up 6%, compared to 4.1. So one thing that I will say also to note, so if you are a Claude Code user, I actually did see this, and this is really important. And I will say that I did rebuy, I bought Claude Max again. As you guys know, I canceled my Claude Max subscription because I just wasn't getting the usage out of it. And they were limiting Claude Opus. So because Claude Opus was so expensive, Claude Opus 4.5, it was difficult to use Claude Code because they would be limiting you on your usage. But now, if we actually open up the usage tab, what you're going to see is that there's no longer a special allocation amount for Opus. And I don't know if they're just doing this for a period of time for promotion or something like that, but in my mind, because they were able to actually bring the cost down so much, they may not actually need to do that anymore. So if you have a super expensive model that costs $75 per million tokens and $15 on the input, that's an incredibly expensive model, but because they were able to cut that in 1/3, you're going to get way more usage out of that. And look at this. So November 24th, 2025, we've increased your limits and removed the Opus cap, so you can use Opus 4.5 up to your overall limit. Sonnet now has its own limits set to match your previous overall limit, so you can use just as much as before. We may continue to adjust limits as we learn how usage patterns evolve over time. So yeah, I just actually saw that now. So yeah, so that usage cap is gone, which was a limiting factor. So for me, that 3%, when you're talking about agentic coding, that 3% on the SWE benchmark can be the difference between building the clipping agent and getting it the way that you want or not. And you can see how fast this model actually is. It's just cooking through the README file, just to test like, hey, how fast is it, right? And yeah, it's super, super fast. So, one thing that we'll be doing on stream today is we're going to be iterating on this, and we're going to be polishing this this AI clipping agent. But, we came into yesterday's stream for day 84 of Vibe Coding an App Until I Make $1 million, knowing that this feature was going to be incredibly difficult to build. There's a ton of moving parts. There's a ton of packages. There's a ton of things. Like, for example, there's 5 steps to creating these clips, right? And each step has AI integrations, and each step is integrating with additional APIs, and it's very complex, right? And we came into yesterday's stream knowing it was difficult, and I think that, yeah, it's definitely a testament to how good Opus 4.5 is when, look at this, you can see the failures. Failed, 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 failed. And then you just start to see it start to work, and you can start to see it evolve. I mean, here is the first one that we got to work. It wasn't able to actually, integrate it with S3, and then we just continued to iterate and iterate. Look at this. Look at this. This is like the second iteration. I pretty much went over to Gemini and I said, hey, I want you no face tracking, no face cropping. The captions were like terrible, and then we were able to just feed all this back into Opus to the point where, yeah, now this is what we have for our clipping agent. So this is now usable, and this section, I'm just very, very impressed with what it was able to do. So, with that being said, I'll be working on this today for our day 85 stream, but, just to recap, 70.1 million tokens spent on Opus 4.5 yesterday, and as a vibe coder, I'm very, very happy that we now have a better model. This model is incredible, and you look at the benchmarks and then you use it, you look at the speed, you look at the pricing, you look at the intelligence, and you can feel it, right? When you use these models enough, you can tell, right? I can tell if somebody's just BSing the benchmarks, right? Like I'll use Grok, for example, and Grok sometimes scores really well on the benchmarks, but I'll use it and I'll be like, yeah, I don't know. There's something wrong with that model, right? But with this model, I can feel it, right? And I can feel how powerful it is. So, that's just one thing I share from my perspective. I did rebuy Claude Max because, still it is an expensive model, right? I mean, if you go back to usage, something to note, it's like, hey, look at GPT-5.1 Codex High. Look at my usage here, right? 300 million tokens. And I spent $84. It was included in my plan, right? And then over here for Opus, 70 million tokens. So I spent, what is that? I don't know, about a fourth of the amount of tokens. And I'm almost as much, spent as much. So, in terms of how expensive the model is, it's a more expensive model. But I think that now the Claude Max plan, you're going to get more usage out of Claude Opus 4.5. So I knew, okay, we're going to buy Claude Max again because we're going to get a ton of usage out of Opus. So I know that this month, probably until, whether whoever releases the next model that's going to top it, I think that Claude Opus 4.5 is going to be the best model that we have for a bit, because we just got Gemini 3 Pro, we just got GPT 5.1. I think that Grok 5 is coming here soon, so we'll see how that model is. But I mean, Claude Opus 4.5 is going to be the best model here for a bit. I may be proved wrong. The space is obviously moving incredibly fast, but that's why I bought Claude Max again. I think that you're going to get more usage out of it. I think that you're going to be able to probably get unlimited usage because of that cost reduction. But with that being said, that's kind of my view of it, and the things that I'm taking into consideration, and kind of showing what it was able to actually build with this clipping agent. I'm going to continue to use the model. I could be proved wrong. I could just be getting ahead of myself. But from this initial usage of that 70 million tokens, I think it's fair to say that this is going to be a model that we're going to be using very, very regularly over the coming months. So just wanted to make a quick video about it. Let me know what you guys think of the model in the description down below, or the comments down below. And with that being said, I will see you guys in the future.